What's happening? Benton here. Can't really find any content. Man, we just fueled up the rig. Probably should have made my lunch. We got 4.5 hours approximately to a truck stop where I ordered some products to an Amazon locker. And at that point, we decide if we can make it to the delivery by 4 p.m. or do we stay at that truck stop for the night? I'd prefer to stay for the night. There are some potential advantages to maybe getting unloaded. Now, the worst case scenario would be to, it's about 60 miles, would be to embark on the 60 miles, not get unloaded, and then end up driving the 60 miles right back to the same truck stop, only to then drive 60 miles back in the morning. LOL, truck driving. Shout out to the chat. I'm not reading the chat. Hopefully nobody down there is causing any shenanigans. And I know they're not now, but just in the future, in the near future. We'll see. Oh, I almost busted my ass getting fuel just now. I was moving swiftly and stepped up and over the DEF hose as it was pumping DEF into the tank. And when my heel came down, I guess there was a fuel or something on the slick concrete. And man, if not for the excellent footwork and cat-like reflexes, I was going down hard, Jack. I hope somebody's seen it. I had to go inside because the card reader wasn't working outside. And the 20-something gal looked kind of like a little chubbier Juliana Margulies, if anybody remembers her from television. I always kind of liked her. Juliana. Is it Julianne or Juliana? Julianne Margulies. Same hair and everything. Yeah, I called and woke the owner of the company up this morning because I didn't really appreciate. Maybe I took it personal that when I went to that delivery, and by some miracle I got unloaded, but these guys look at these places on Google Satellite View and just assume it's easy sledding, but there's two big roll-up doors, but that doesn't mean that that's where they are going to unload my truck. Oh, look at those big roll-up doors. Surely they'll have him back in there. No, I got to drive the wrong way onto the back lot there, which was snowed over, and some of it was a foot deep. And of course, it was dark when I got there, so because I wanted to get my trailer out of the road, I just went ahead and just drove onto the back lot and figured I could back out of there if I needed to. And then next thing you know, I'm trying to drive through around back, but there's not really enough room. And I'm almost clearing a fence, but I'm not. And I have to back out. Damn near get stuck backing out. It was a close one. Dang near got stuck backing out. And I'm not quitting YouTube. I just had a thought, it's like I used to have a channel. I used to have just people say, well, what are we, chop liver? We're here listening. Well, fair enough. What is it then? Oh, well, you got me there. I don't know. What is it? You tell me. I don't even know anymore. What's even happening? They say Epstein. Well, I can't just can't or won't go there. Here and there as a maybe a point of reference, but it's just because I've been, 10 plus years ago, I was listening to Alex Jones. He was covering all that. In fact, he covered, the everything that went down with Epstein at the state level in Florida, right? So I knew about that before most people even heard Epstein's name. And not that that's, oh, look at cool, conspiracy theorist Benton. It's just, all of this has been known for a long time. And that doesn't in any way take away from, what may or may not have happened. And I don't know what happened. And I'm not denying reality. Well, I kind of am at the level of waking dreams, surrealistic, unreality, deja vu all over again. But, this old evil, sick world, Fritz Springmeier's, or is it Fitz? I always forget. Fritz Springmeier's book, How the Illuminati Create a Total Undetectable Mind Control Slave, covers a lot of that sort of material. The politicians, especially with the sex slaves and the satanic ritual abuse. And, I read that book a couple of times many years ago. And now as we see Normie as baby truther for at least a few years now, and how much of this was to sort of prepare the way for, your average person to be able to take in such the horror, right? Colonel Kurtz's The Horror. That's probably not the correct, framework for that, but just, I don't know, man. I don't know what to make of it all. Can definitely tell I'm behind on sleep. Now I'm in Maryland on a 2-lane highway, but I believe 22 miles will be on the interstate again. I'm having to take the longer route because I take the other route that would put me on, I would already be on the interstate. There's some city driving that I'm not a big fan of through New Jersey. I'd rather avoid. This is like 22 miles longer, I think. I guess this is the extra stretch, huh? Is that how that works? Pretty country, I reckon. Yeah, and it's a bit petty calling and waking up the owner of the company, but they tell me he likes to say that he's 24/7, and it's like, all right, well, okay. It's about 6 a.m. his time, and called to let him know I was in the process of maybe getting stuck in this lot, snowed over, iced over the parking lot, or whatever it was. And I said, well, I'll either make it or I won't. You'll either be towing the rig or you won't. Unfortunately, it all worked out. And as I've talked about, I guess this is 3 streams in a row. I said no to the, it was a truckload, but it only filled about half the truck. And then it was, an LTL, a less than truckload. And of course, as predicted, when I finally made it to this place this morning, I was supposed to be there yesterday. They were surprised to see that I didn't have any means of assisting them in unloading the awkward, it's on like these 3 like longer pallets. They're not quite double, but they're longer pallets. With these long, like electrical conduit, I guess, like it almost looks like, I guess vents or ductwork or whatever you call that. Metal, like boxes, but with the cylinders coming out of each end. Of course, since I'm involved, what's the first thing the guy says? Oh, I've never seen anything like that before. Meanwhile, all he does is, work at a place that has all sorts of different electrical components. Electrician shop, big, pretty nice one, man. You had at a certain point, I got to go into the office. Not that I really wanted to, but there's like between 4 and 6 cubicles, I believe. So I don't know, probably a multi-million-dollar business. However many techs were sitting in their pickup trucks in the parking lot, installers, well, electricians, I suppose. There's at least like 6 of them. At this point, I'm kind of halfway hoping they just fire me. It'd be funny to get a call later, and God'd be diplomatic, but he'd still drop the hammer, and I'd be, what I would say? I'd say, oh, thank God. Thank you. Now just let me know. All I'm asking is I need to move out of this truck into a motel somewhere or an extended stay or whatever. So however you want to do this, let me know. Because I don't know that I'm going to be able to bring myself to quit, but I'm over it, man, and I hate to quit. Well, I don't, actually. I don't have a problem whining and crying and complaining. But meanwhile, this fella that was the driving force in getting this load off the truck, 67 years old, and well, he just jumped right in that trailer, man, better than I do. I'm like, oh, man, didn't even make any old man noises. Thankfully, they found the extenders for the forklift, thankfully. Otherwise, I think we'd have been SOL. I don't know. Call it petty. I felt like it was appropriate to call up the owner this morning. I sent him a bunch of pictures of and I have no interest. I have absolutely no interest in this LTL multi-stop. We're combining this load with that load. I mean, I didn't even have time to really look at the freight. But once I got in the trailer, just in case they needed me, and I wanted to take a bunch of pictures, this shit barely fit. What is this? What even is this? So you got, dispatchers just sort of eyeballing and guessing and just hoping and praying. And I told him yesterday when I called him, the owner, I said, man, every time my gut tells me no and I put my foot down, if I backslide, it's never not been a disaster. And of course, this was a minor disaster, I would say. Minor disaster. Of course, we got through what hopefully was the minor disaster portion, mostly unscathed, although it was a miracle. If I hadn't have been prayed up, I'm not sure if things could have gone very differently yesterday. Yeah, and I got to talk to a local, that old man, the spry old man. I said, hey, I got a screenshot. I want to show you where they sent me. Because he said, I heard you went to 4 states. And I was like, well, I don't know what that is because I'm not familiar with the area. But I just want to show you where they sent me. And I showed him, and he was just like, confirmed everything I had known, about where they tried to get me to drive to. Well, I did drive into there, but I couldn't even physically make it onto the road where the delivery was. But I went to the general area, right? I mean, boy, howdy. He was just, he didn't really have anything to say about it other than, just agreeing with me, but definitely wasn't putting me on. And then, it's not that I don't like these people at the company. It's that, the number and look, this is what it is. Everything's a business. And the money comes first. And what I mean by that is the money comes way before any consideration about my working conditions. Went on a minor tirade this morning about unions, being just, that's for the most part a no-go. Now there is some in trucking, but really not anything for what I'm doing. But so, and that's part of the thing is, why am I doing LTL fucking, it's basically pick and drop is what they would call this. What I did, I mean, other than the fact that I went over the road with it from, where the hell did I pick this up at? Well, just out 90 miles east of Omaha to middle of nowhere, West Virginia. Ended up on a one-lane road where only my driving skill was the difference between, getting stuck, having to call out the wrecker, and blocking the entire road for Lord knows how long. But or worst case scenario, just rolling down into the bottom of a holler, right? With snow everywhere but the road, meaning I don't know what's under that snow. It's feet of snow, man. I don't fucking know what's under there. Couldn't tell you. What up, Glenn? What up, US8? What's up, our poll? All right, we've greeted the few but the proud, right? Anybody proud of anything going on? I can't even say nowadays, And certainly this is on some way the demoralization, right? Although I would argue if we're looking at the Yuri Bezmenov, communism, this is Brezhnev's, the situation has been normalized at this point. And I see, and again, is it bots? Is it, an agenda? I don't know. I mean, the YouTube comments mean something. And I've gone to just a couple of videos, like really just one video, just sort of take the pulse of the people or the bots or whatever it is. And, I've seen multiple postings about just basically, well, it's this way it's more or less this way across the world, everywhere. All countries are more or less this way. And, in combination with, well, what do you expect people to do? And the answer is, I expect people to do better than this. That's what I mean, call me crazy. That's what I expect. Now, certainly, there's nothing I can realistically do. That's free will. Free will is everybody within the context of the waking dream, surrealistic unreality. What else did I call it? Oh, the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions. I mean, everybody seemingly gets to make their own decisions. And, as much as Millennial Steam Channel talks about, he keeps running into people in his daily life that are workers and mention a loss of hope. I mean, contained within the human being is a hope station, as we've talked about over here. So there's really, there's exceptions, people who do actually lose hope. But as far as people who are going to continue to drag themselves to employment on a regular basis until they're, out on their ass, like Dignan from Bottle Rocket, then they clearly have hope. Hope is, Benton realizing, and this isn't really the same thing, but when I worked at this gas station in Portsmouth, Arkansas, it was like the writing was on the wall, man. They even started advertising for help, but we weren't hiring. And I knew they meant me. It was basically like, hey, he's really good at, my attitude is very poor. He's really good. He shows up. He's perfect on the register and all this, and he does all his other work, but they were just sick of my attitude. And I think that's starting to happen with this trucking company. And that's not entirely my fault, but I don't want to get into that until I finish this point, which is, um, and I never used to smoke weed before work ever. And finally, I smoked maybe half a joint and drove to work and parked and just looked at the building and just shook my head and drove back home and didn't show back up. And they didn't call me and I didn't talk to them. And I showed up and they paid me my check. And it was like, well, all right, bye. No hard feelings, Good knowing you. Stereotypical. It's been real. It's been fun. I can't say it's been real fun. So that's sort of, that was the loss of hope. It was like in my stone state, it was like, what am I doing here? This is crazy. And that was just before I changed my whole life. And in fact, that really unlocked a lot of things having to do with the, unlocking the achievement of within the world of death and the game of lies of true knowledge of self, true knowledge of self / self-realization. Was to, sort of stage by stage by stage to remove myself, from these things. Because other than I had a period of unemployment after following my first divorce, I'd always worked and, was, never really a normie. It was like I was a normie oddball, if that makes sense. And, I was attempting to go along with the program and happy to do so in a lot of ways, or at least perhaps contented. And so it's not a loss of hope, in my opinion. It's a disillusionment. Most of the normies, the ones who are not able to really bust their ass and hustle and make, a high salary, you're just your average person who at least seemingly believed that as Americans, on some level, their birthright was a standard of living so high that as long as they were willing to work full time, they were more or less entitled to live indoors, have groceries in the fridge, have reliable transportation, and pay their bills, and maybe possibly save for retirement. And so what's being referred to perhaps as a loss of hope, I would say, well, that's actually what I would refer to as a disillusionment, which is in some way an awakening, potentially, or maybe, the opportunity for some folks to begin to raise their level of conscious awareness. Because I would assert that whatever it is that they may now be disillusioned with, if that's in fact the case, well, that's always was present. Those factors were never not there. They were there, when I was, finally gave up on pretending to be a college student and, just worked. And of course I worked while I was going to college, but that's not really the point. When I, from there, it was like, and I always had some lady I was dating or married to, and that was kind of my life in a way and my hobbies. It was sort of the American thing of, well, he's got some abilities and, I never, there were times when it was difficult to find jobs, but, I was always, being young and, Mr. Personality on some level and willing to do some fairly crap jobs. Let's not forget about that. for low pay, the American dream, do more for less. And so that's what I'm doing on this job. Benton is living the American dream, which is to do more for less. It's like, oh, you think you're an over the road truck driver? Well, how about Yellow Corporation, the nation's largest LTL carrier, goes out of business however many years ago, and next thing you know, Benton's on one of these type of runs, because that should have, you know, an LTL carrier should have went out there, picked this freight up, driven it to whatever warehouse of theirs. And I think some of those companies are private owned. Whatever their facility is, unload it at their dock and then put it on a smaller truck. And that's probably what would have happened. And now the thing is, some of those are union jobs. I'm not sure about the case of Yellow Corp or YRC Worldwide specifically, but I know some of this LTL stuff. It's union, and you get into seniority and bidding on routes, and you got these line haul positions. But yeah, if somebody's willing to work their way up, from the docks and finally have enough seniority. Meanwhile, they're going to be doing pick and drop, just, loading their own trailer. But the trucker is the dock worker, right? But it's a union dock. And then their job is union. And then, yeah, they're out there dropping, with a lift gate and a pallet jack, but, they have a grievance, right? There's a grievance process. There's a union, see? And so, and again, I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but, we've also had a time of layoffs with the LTL carriers, and that's a normal thing, but it's probably worse during this freight recession. So the point I'm making is more of that freight ends up in the hands of brokers who are adept at telling whatever lies they need to tell to a dispatcher at a long haul company, van truckload, right? LTL is less than truckload, multiple loads that don't take the entire trailer. And numerous times when I was just doing van truckload, I got loaded, and sometimes it's 2 pallets, and I might drive it 1,500 miles, right? Now it's I'm with a long haul company, but they're doing everything in their power to put as much freight on that truck as possible. And I get it. I understand people are trying to make a future for their families, but for what? And am I borging, or just nobody wants to hear the union talk? Yeah, God forbid we have something that would advocate for the worker. And God forbid there would be human being. And this is okay. Thank you for proving my point. So unless I'm borging, right? Let me see. Nobody's chatting either. Unless I'm borging, I'm just going to assume that I don't have a YouTube channel, because as I'm sort of going through some of my own frustrations and just general thoughts in a sort of an audio blog journaling, like a sort of a, verbal diarrhea in a way, right? Which is, if I journaled, that's what I would just more or less do, right? Sort of get it all out. That's what this is. I'm getting it out. As my people would say, I'm getting shed of it. And so realistically, there is no YouTube channel. And if I was still willing to purchase computer equipment and quit this job and take some time off, yeah, I can enjoy myself for a few months doing reaction style content, and then, be Mr. Personality just enough, and tolerate some of these panelverse bozos in the so-called truth community, just long enough to, have whatever live viewership, and then beg enough to maybe, like in the past, paid for the room I was staying in Arkansas for $700 a month. Basically, for 3 months, I made a total of, I made right at $2,100, and that went paid for the room. Well, yeah, that's lucrative in my world. Now, if I keep growing my hair out and not smoking weed when I quit jobs, or if I somehow manage to grind out about 9 months on this job, well, hypothetically, I can go to a company like Martin, who will hire me to haul for Walmart. And I guess I better speed up. Didn't even realize I was on the freeway now. And, there would be problems because, look, if it's trucking, there's problems. I mean, that just comes with the territory. But, and some of the backhauls are probably a big pain in the ass. And it's slip seating, meaning you live in the truck, but only while you're, working. And I don't know that they have a version of no home time 7 days a week. I doubt it. Although, who knows? Maybe. Now, there are advantages to slip seating, which is at a certain point, I take my bullshit out of the truck at the end of my last shift, and then I clean it for the next driver. And now how often that happens, who knows? But I would do that, sure. But maybe not as thoroughly as some. And I'm sure some guys just are in the habit of cleaning it no matter what. A lot of germaphobes out there, as they take over the truck. But, like right now, I'm pretty sure we're overdue for a PM, a preventative maintenance on this truck, basically a glorified oil change. Like, when's that going to happen? On my time, I suppose. But, in a slip seating type of world, it's like, okay, well, that'll happen on Walmart's time or Martin's time. Actually, I'm wrong. Martin doesn't do slip seating. I'm mistaken because I don't want to work for Walmart. So I actually scratch all that. So I don't even know what I'm talking about at this point. I don't know why I started thinking about. I don't want to work for Walmart, even though it pays more. And I'm going to mention it again. This guy that helped me get out of this bad situation in the 1-lane road and barely passable in a rig this size, and I mean just barely. And with a lower skilled driver, it would not have been impassable. He said, I've led a lot of guys out of here. He said the times I feel bad is when they don't speak English and we can't communicate. And they, I think what he's implying is they don't understand that they need to follow me. And then he just at some point has to just shrug his shoulders and, just kind of wish them well and good luck to you, partner. And see, I should never be in that situation as a truck driver. With modern technology, and so back to the broker, so finally a broker ends up with it instead of an LTL company. And, it's probably not on any kind of crazy time frame. And the broker, raises their price and raises their price and raises their price. And finally, here comes my company. And I take one look at it and try to say no. Well, the broker is lying to the dispatch. And dispatch is intelligent enough, they probably know they're being lied to, most likely. And because we're given a fake address, and almost never do I deliver or pick up to an address that I can't just type into my GPS, my routing app. It almost never happens. Meaning they gave us it's an address of a residence, right? But it's not in the town. Sometimes you have you'll get the address was technically Worthington, West Virginia, except the actual business they want the shop is not the street address. This is just where the owner lives. And I figured that out with some YouTube I researched on Google and figured that out. And so then I'm like, hey man, do we know where this delivery is? And nobody's done homework, nobody's done research. Oh, I'll reach out to the okay, sure. And I get sent a GPS coordinates, and I'm just looking at it like, well, this is fucked, Well, I punch it into my GPS, which it thinks. Really, all it knows is there's not a heavy bridge. There's not a bridge that I'm too heavy, although sometimes there is. That's a gray area. And number two, there's not a low bridge or low clearance. And number three, there's a very high likelihood that it's not by law restricted to big trucks. Other than that, it's just whatever the software determines. And at a certain point, the software decided that this is a makeable right turn. And maybe it was. But the first words the guy said to me is, well, you'll never make that right turn. I've seen a bunch of them try. And I said, well, all right, well, what do I do now? And then I think he could tell I didn't really, because I'm looking at it and, I didn't say it, but what was on my mind is I'm pretty sure I can make that. And either way, again, part of that is I don't know what's underneath that snow that I'm probably going to end up putting at least one of these tires on. And then later, after I agreed to follow him out, he even said something about, especially on those super singles. And then he looked at and actually I've never pulled a trailer or a truck. I've never driven a truck or pulled a trailer with super singles. It's one, wide tire instead of the two, narrower tires. But he said, whatever, man, either way. And it's what I told him. I said, man, listen, I'm here, you're here, and you're from here, and the people in the company ain't here. So, and I ain't from here. So I'm going with what you say. Right. I said, all right, well, what do we do now? And he said, well, and he looks kind of, it's like, well, you're not going to be able to back out. So, basically your only option is to go over the ridge. Like, oh, okay, well, that sounds lovely. And he's like, are your tandems all the way up and all of this? And it's like, I'm just like, man, I'm not being cocky, but I'm pretty damn good with the tight turns. So if you can lead the way, and it turned out he was a local truck driver, so that helped. So like, yeah, if you can lead the fucking way in your pickup truck, let's do it. It's about 45 minutes getting out of there. Would have been 2 hours if I had to do that solo. And probably I would have just said, fuck it, and got as much out of the way as possible and just called the company and said, I don't know what y'all gonna do, but this is fucked. Something's got to be done. I don't know if we got to call the cops to come get me out of here, but I don't know what to tell you. Of course, they'll just try to blame me. That's how that goes. But and this is a long way around to go back to the discussion of unions, which is that this would be effectively impossible with a union because it'd be some kind of LTL carrier who's somewhat familiar with the area at least and understands, well, we can get in there with a 45-footer in a day cab, but anything beyond that is treacherous. Certainly not a motherfucking sleeper. Maybe a day cab and a 53-footer, but even then it's going to be the locals are going to have to get the fuck out of the way type shit with no shoulders. In one lane, one motherfucking lane in spot. Like what even is that on some level? This is your life, right? This is your air quote so-called life, which is a breakfast cereal. Mikey likes it, And then people, yeah, exactly. If the live chat is on, does a YouTuber exist? I don't know, DWS. Good to see you, sir. And what is existence, right? Now we sort of get into the what even is that, right? And I'm not even trying to go down that rabbit hole necessarily, but when old Benton starts to get sleep deprived, he gets a little silly at times, a little loopy, a little silly, and a little content deprived. And so we can talk about Epstein, but then what about Turkey Tom? Anybody been following the Turkey Tom? Shout out to Tarman, he covered some of it, and some of it was a little the graphic sexual. It was very sexually graphic, and there was many years in my life where I was in favor of that sort of thing, but I do my best not to listen to to take in those sort of details. But, so I kind of had to click off and come back a few times. And Turkey Tom's going through it with some chick who's claims to have the receipts and trying to out him on being a creepazoid or whatever. And Turkey Tom's got a big YouTube channel and does documentaries mostly about various lol cows. And then, of course, the timing of the Epstein, and then, Trump in office, and, there's a lot of anger brewing below the surface, simmering, and, boiling over but again, a lot of this anger is directed inwardly, clearly, in my opinion, with the so-called right wing. They like to say half the country. Well, it's maybe let's call it what it is. It's maybe a third, and even then, it's sort of in name only. It's supposedly 27% of the populace identifies as Republican, 27 as Democrat, and then 54% independent. And that doesn't entirely math, but there's a margin for error in there, I'm sure. But yeah. And see, now we're getting into, and I appreciate the people dropping off, because it's like they're like, yeah, we also don't want to hear the fucking Epstein talk. And I'm like, yeah, fair enough. I don't really want to think about it or talk about it either. So, I'm really only mentioning it because seemingly, for what little bit I follow the news cycles these days, seemingly that's sort of taken over in the short term. But people are pissed, man, and they're not necessarily pissed because of potential Trump involvement. I think they're pissed because, they were sold a bill of goods, and, that's on them to some extent. But, and I do have some empathy for them. Some of this is my basis for compassion, right? And, but shame on them as well, right? In a way, they should have known better. And I don't even think voting is real anyway. So, I mean, if Moloch's machine, the powers that be, decide Trump's going to be, a two-term president with a one-term Biden in between, I mean, that's whatever. That's what happens, right? Tyrone, 33 miles to Tyrone. 20 to Altoona. Well, I went through Altoona, Iowa, not that long ago. A few days ago. That's interesting. I guess it's PA, perhaps. Altoona, PA. So, I think we're starting, not we collectively, but, the being perhaps begins to see through a glass darkly and accept potentially accept, well, you look, you know, the royal we never had a country. You know, the royal we had a Cold War. So that's propaganda. That's psychological control. That's mind control, right? That's ideology. You know, that's uh, standards of behavior, perhaps. You know, terms of engagement or rules of engagement, or sort of, well, you know, unevolved, unenlightened beings through the subversion of their creative force of what, you know, they may in fact be deep down, um, creating a persona on the fly on an ongoing basis perpetually in relation to a Cold War, which has tie-ins with nationalism, right, and American exceptionalism. And then for anybody who has a memory, and I know many don't, and many folks simply weren't reading the newspaper and watching the TV news in 1991 and 1990. Well, I was. Now, I didn't watch it. You know, I wasn't one of these, oh, I'm an old man, I have to be in front of the TV for the TV news. What I mean is, if I was watching TV and it came on, I fucking watched it. And remember, CNN didn't really catch on until the Gulf War, and that was so that was right in there, but it, you know, it wasn't really a thing entirely. Now it had been around for a while, but you know, I remember flipping through the channels, and CNN was this really wasn't a. It was a channel, but it really wasn't a thing. And I think that Gulf War really sort of put it on the map. That first Gulf War, 91 rather. It's my memory of it. You know, we all, to some extent, watched that war on television, um, to some extent. But then, or a sizable portion of Americans. And in fact, the narrative was that Herbert Walker believed that that invasion of Kuwait, right, and Iraq, right, apparently on behalf of Kuwait, if I'm remembering that correctly, you know, the liberation of Kuwait, I don't know, whatever it was, you know, but not a regime change. You know, Saddam remained in power, but oh well, basically, as we found out later, the U.S. assured Saddam if he invaded Kuwait, they wouldn't do anything. And you know, Herbert Walker, former head of the CIA, Herbert Walker Bush 41, you know, would have been instrumental in that, certainly. And again, this is at face value, official fiction, you know, NPC normie layer of what was, you know, supposedly happening. But then we get to the 90, you know, the 92 to 96 presidency, right? Which actually is, so the election's in 91, man, right? Or is it, I don't know, however that works. I forget. Let's blame the sleep deprivation. It's actually either way, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it would have to be January of like 93. So the election's in 92. So by 92, you had that big eared, funny looking, funny talking Ross Perot. You know, Saturday Night Live, which I was a big watcher of back then. And, you know, I didn't really understand what was being reported at the time, but, you know, he had this catchphrase. He was always talking about the giant sucking sound. Well, that was how he referred to what was about to happen over a period of, I don't know, 20 years or whatever. And it was the lie of this sector-based economy, right? The service sector. It's going to be services, and it's going to be consumption, and you know, importation of goods, and increasingly, right? And then outsourcing of jobs to other countries. And and clearly a lot of that began under Reagan and the so-called neoliberalism um, of Reagan's two terms, and then Herbert Walker, a seeming continuation of that. So I guess Clinton would have actually been. So yeah, the Ross Perot, that would have been 95, then, not 92. See, I'm misremembering. No, wait a minute. No, I'm not. Herbert Walker was, yeah, 89 to 92. Okay, no, I do have the right time frame. My bad. I just want to be clear. Yeah, Clinton. Okay, I want to make sure I got the right years. 92 to 8 to 2000. Then two-term W, Bush 43. Then two-term Obama got us. So Bush got us to the 43, got us to the very start and early stages of the 08, 09 global financial crisis. And then Obama, got to take over. So it wasn't his fault. Same thing with Biden, who got to take over, you know, after there had already been an Operation Warp Speed, and but it became Biden's jab, right? So that sort of how that worked. So, and all of that's important to keep in mind. So back to NAFTA, the North Atlantic, was it North Atlantic? North American Free Trade Agreement, Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. And that's where Alex Jones got into a lot of his talk around the so-called North American Union and the Amero. And some of that happened, some of it didn't. Now, what he really got right was and a lot of it was tied into to NAFTA and later trade agreements, under, I forget who was the head of Canada, but, Vicente Fox, was that the guy's name in Mexico? And if I'm saying that right. Uh, these trade agreements, which remember was Republican, Democrats did some of it, Republicans did some of it. Same thing with the global financial crisis, same thing with the pandemic. It's funny when it seems like any time there's these big changes, it spans multiple administrations. And in fact, 9/11 was quite early into, W would have been inaugurated in 2001, January, and then September the 11th of 2001 happened. So that's a relatively short time frame, right? Yeah, there you go. That's the right spelling. I didn't know how to pronounce it. Vincente? I don't know. And, I've talked about the global financial crisis a lot. And so one of the key players is Larry Summers. And he's one of the big key players in every time I manage to read a little bit of an article about some of this Epstein stuff, it's almost always something involving Larry Summers as the money man, some version of the money man, because you need somebody with a reputation who's, by the time, because Epstein had the whole thing in Florida first. So in order to access some of this financing that he was able to access, you needed somebody with a big reputation to sort of sign off on it. And once somebody like Larry Summers is willing to sort of, put his name on it, now it's a signal to everybody else to go ahead and do business with somebody like Epstein, if that makes sense. And then, just you can go to the Wikipedia page for global financial crisis, and I probably would if I thought I could pull that off while I'm driving in these winter conditions. But and I'm sure a lot of that is no longer as quite as extensive. Because probably in the past I would have said, well, just go to Larry Summers' Wikipedia page, but some of the relevant information will have been scrubbed by now. I know that's the case with respect to Jamie Dimon and some of his statements that used to be on his Wikipedia page, and that shit ain't there no more. Because now the reality is Americans do, when they do remember the global financial crisis, I think it's mostly seen as effective and you know, the solving of a problem, but you know, that ain't really what happened. You know, it's not actually what happened, as far as I can tell. Well, as far as I know. I don't know. Let me see if I can maybe look at his Wikipedia real quick, or actually just global financial crisis. Unable to receive audio. Oh, I know what that is. Never mind. Oh, I'm searching my tabs anyway. That ain't gonna work. Global financial crisis. All right, here we go. Story time with Benton. Global 2008 global financial crisis, rather also known as the global financial crisis (GFC) or the Panic of 2008, was a major worldwide financial crisis centered in the United States. The causes included excessive speculation on property values by both homeowners and financial institutions, leading to the 2000s United States housing bubble. This was exacerbated by predatory lending for subprime mortgages and by deficiencies in regulation. And I wouldn't even agree with that last part, but I understand that's partially the view. Hang on, we got slow mergers to contend with, who will almost certainly put the pedal to the metal the moment I'm forced out of my lane. So give me just a moment while we speed 10 miles over. Oh, they let us over, amazingly. Wasn't quite expecting that. I got my own opinions on regulation, but that's a different matter. Cash out refinancings had fueled an increase in consumption that could no longer be sustained when home prices declined. The first phase of the crisis was the subprime mortgage crisis, which began in early 2007 as mortgage-backed securities tied to U.S. real estate and a vast web of derivatives linked to those mortgage-backed securities. And this is all the stuff that I spent almost a year studying and filling up to about 30 notebooks with my own notes. Like, I'm not exaggerating. Linked to collapsed in value, a liquidity crisis spread to global institutions by mid-2007 and climaxed with the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers in September 2008, which triggered a stock market crash and bank runs in several countries, including Cyprus, which experienced a so-called bail-in. That's my own commentary. The crisis exacerbated the Great Recession, a global recession that began in mid-2007, as well as the United States bear market of 07 to 09. It was also a contributor to the 2008 to 2011 Icelandic financial crisis and the Euro area crisis. And remember, in Iceland, the Icelanders said, "Fuck you, we're not bailing out anything. Y'all can go fuck yourselves." Um, lest we forget. But and so what I would say to Americans is, until Americans study for themselves and have some notion of what the fuck went on in 2000 to 2010, and really it persists to this day. But let's get into the Larry Summers stuff. But I would say, anybody that wants to talk about bread and circuses and, you know, thinks there might be an awakening of the sleeping giant, go study up on the global financial crisis and ask yourself, well, why didn't this, lead to a revolution? Why didn't this lead to, the people? We've had all we can stands, we can't stands no more. If you educate yourself to any degree on the global financial crisis and what went on, without saying, well, surely this would have led to the people, you know, maybe finally being willing to take some power over the government. If that's not going to do it, nothing will. And that leads to my conclusion that there's simply no end to what the American people will tolerate. And that's my view of Epstein, which is the Epstein stuff, which is, Americans are going to do what they always do. They're going to normalize it and move on to the next thing. That's what they always do. But let's find Larry Summers' name. But we're skipping past a lot of details. Okay, here we go. Federal actions toward the crisis. I think this is where we'll start to see his name. We'll start seeing some names potentially. Or maybe I do have to go to his Wikipedia page. I haven't seen anybody's name yet. Causes. Yeah, see, to me, this is already a whitewashing of what happened. And then, to actually read this as a layperson and to seek to understand just the Wikipedia page, like I get it. I understand why people don't want to read it, And in fact, here, again, if I had a proper streamer set up, and I have the money, I may get one. I haven't decided yet, but I could just have the AI or the fucking automated voice read this whole thing. And I don't have a YouTube channel, so what's the difference, right? Well, I used to have a YouTube channel, and I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting yapping. I mean, where else would I yap? If not here, where? It's got to be. There's a Glass-Steagall mention. Still no Larry Summers, unless I'm just missing it. Need more coffee. I'm going to pull over and get some coffee. Good God. Oh, we're starting to see some economists' names. Krugman. NPR. Blah, blah, blah. Ben Bernanke, Fed chairman. Hang in there, folks. He's got it. If he's not mentioned, I don't even know what I'm going to do. Oh, shit. Hang on, they're riding my ass for no fucking reason. What's the speed limit out here? What are you doing back there, buddy? I mean, it's my fault for letting you ride back there, but why? For what? Anyway, let's not get into that. Blah, 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 yada, yada. Too big to fail. Jerry Brown, California Attorney General Jerry Brown sued Countrywide Financial for deceptive lending practices, predatory lending. Deregulation and lack of regulation. Man, this is crazy. Long-term capital management from 98. Talked about that before, LTCM. That was sort of a mini bailout. That was kind of 08, 09 before, yeah, 08. That was 08, sort of before 08 was LTCM, but it was it was much more limited in scope. Almost like a test run in a way for what came later. Greenspan, derivatives, Enron. Enron actually plays more of a part than people realize. Motherfucker, this is crazy that we haven't seen Larry Summers' name. I think I am going to have to read this whole thing out loud at some point. CDOs, collateralized debt obligations. I studied up on that. Yeah, this is, to me, this is a must read. If somebody thinks they're an American and they believe in any notion around a proper country, you know, if folks haven't familiarized themselves with at least, and remember, I've been scrolling this whole fucking time, scrolling and skimming, shadow banking system. They have to mention Paulson and Larry Summers. I don't know, my head might explode. If not. This is crazy. And see, this is what happens to these big corporate fat cats. You know, yeah, they took a lot of heat seemingly back during the time, and then, but they know in the back of their mind, you know, as by the way, Larry Summers is now, you know, it was somewhat scandalous, his involvement in the global financial crisis. Now it's, you know, somewhat scandalous, his involvement in this Epstein thing. And these guys, you know, again, they're above it. You know, these are the administrators. So, you know, the system is going to take care of its people first and foremost. Yes, just not mentioned. And so when I said, oh, you know, that's why I went straight to the global financial crisis page, because I said, hell, it's probably not even really on his Wikipedia page. But if he didn't even make the wiki page, then surely there's got to at least mention it in passing that he had some involvement. Lawrence Summers. Does he make the, can you just type, you can't even type Lawrence in and get Summers in the search. Oh, there he is. It is actually Larry, but I think his name's technically Lawrence. Same age as my dad. Lawrence Henry Summers, born November the 30th of 1954, is an American economist. He served as the 71st United States Secretary of the Treasury from 99 to 2001, as the 27th president of Harvard University. Now, that's a big, you know, they got that huge, insane endowment, a big old pile of cash to manage from 2001 to 2006. And of course, W, you know, was president in there at some point, and he's a Harvard guy. Eighth director of the National Economic Council, 09 to 2010, currently at Harvard Kennedy School. He is the Charles W. Eliot University professor, on leave from his teaching responsibilities. and from his role as director of some sort of Center for Business and Government, due to an investigation into his tie to Jeffrey Epstein. So not a single word about the global financial crisis. Would y'all please get away from me? I mean, I just, why? For what? For what? What's your purpose here? What are you accomplishing by snuggling? I'll never understand it. But anyway, this is hilarious. After his departure from Harvard, Summers worked as a managing partner at the hedge fund D.E. Shaw and Company. Summers rejoined public service during the Obama administration, serving as the director for the White House United States National Economic Council for President Barack Obama, 2009 to 2010, where he emerged as a key economic decision maker in the Obama administration's response to the Great Recession. So this is one of the people they bring in to manage the so-called crisis and the fallout. And it ties in with notions of this stakeholder capitalism, and people like the Machine Lies have covered the idea of it's a recognition of the never-ending boom-bust cycle, economic cycle. So it's to more directly manage the so-called crisis phase is really what we're talking about here. And then that ends up getting misconstrued as, well, they're crashing it on purpose. And it's like, well, you kind of becomes a chicken and an egg, or a cart before the horse sort of thing. Oh, and here he is involved in OpenAI. Isn't that fascinating? November 2023, Summers joined the board of directors of artificial intelligence organization OpenAI before resigning in November 2025 after revelations about his ties to child sex offender Epstein. So remember, he's not even remembered controversially with respect to the global financial crisis. So how many years before he's not, so now it says controversy, but 20 years from now, if his involvement with Epstein is even mentioned, they will remove the framework or the vernacular of controversy. It won't be there. It won't be in the context of the controversy. See, it'll be more of a coincidence. Or hell, maybe they'll say that he helped out somehow. Maybe he'll be, by the end of it, he'll be a fucking hero, right? Potentially. I mean, why not at this point? What's the difference? So who even knows? I'm going to go back. If I still had my notebooks, I guarantee you I wrote that man's name hundreds of times in them notebook. Summers, at least his last name. Barely fucking mentioned. (1991) Dirty Industries controversy. I don't even know what that is. Service in the Clinton administration. Just for time, we'll skip that. Views on regulation, blah, blah, blah. When George Stephanopoulos asked Summers about the 2008 financial crisis in an ABC interview, March 15th, 2009, Summers replied that, quote, there are a lot of terrible things that have happened in the last 18 months. And this is something that you really won't hear mentioned, and that I used to talk about a lot, and I still mention here and there. There are a lot of terrible things that have happened in the last 18 months, but what's happened at AIG, the way it was not regulated, the way no one was watching, is outrageous. Now, how many Americans have any fucking idea what AIG even stands for? Right. Much less what went on. Hmm. In February '09, Summers quoted economist John Maynard, I think it's pronounced Keynes, Keynes, I'm not even sure, saying, when circumstances change, I change my opinion, reflecting on both on the failures of Wall Street deregulation and his new leadership role in the government bailout on April 18th, 2010, in an interview on ABC's This Week program. Clinton, I'm assuming Bill, said Summers was wrong in the advice he gave him not to regulate derivatives. So now you see them kind of covering each other's backs. So, well, listen to these. And because remember, to this day, Summers is so in time when they need the name Larry Summers means, management, influential manager of gigantic wealth funds, or pools of liquidity, let's call it. Right. President of Harvard in 2001, when George W. Bush became president, Summers left the Treasury Department as its 27th president, serving from July '01 to June 2006. He was Harvard's first Jewish president, though his predecessor, Neil Rudenstein's father, was Jewish. A number of Summers' decisions at Harvard have attracted public controversy, either at the time or since his resignation. But anyway, I'm sure there's a lot more, but not really on his Wikipedia page. Well, let's do the Epstein portion real quick. Connection to Epstein and fallout. An article in the Harvard Crimson in 2003 during Summers' tenure as president, and I'm almost certain that was after the Florida criminality and the so-called sweetheart deal in Florida. I'm pretty sure that had already happened. Detailed a reportedly special connection between Summers and Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein pledged to donate at least $25 million to Harvard during Summers' tenure to endow Harvard's program for evolutionary dynamics. And Epstein was given an office at Harvard for his personal use. Interesting. Epstein otherwise had no formal connection to Harvard. Summers' ties to Epstein reportedly began a number of years before Summers became Harvard's president and even before he was the Secretary of the Treasury. Flight records introduced as evidence at the 2021 trial of Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell show that Summers flew on Jeffrey Epstein's private plane on at least 4 occasions, including once in '98 when Summers was United States Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, and at least 3 times while Harvard president. A charity funded by Epstein also donated to the production of a PBS show hosted by Summers' wife and Harvard professor Elisa New, I guess is that how that's pronounced? In 2014, Summers emailed Epstein requesting small-scale philanthropy advice for his wife's nonprofit, Verse Video Education. Interesting. Documents released by Congress November 12, 2025 revealed frequent email communication between the two in 2017, 18, 19, from November 18 to July 2019, the day before Epstein's arrest. Summers sought advice from him on how to pursue a sexual relationship with a woman he described as a mentee, meaning he would be the mentor, and and then I would direct people to the either New York Times or Wall Street Journal article, extensive article talking about the significance of Summers being willing to, in some way, officially do business with Epstein, and what that would have signaled to the financial system more broadly. Some of that does get into opinion, right? And I read the article, but I need to refresh my memory. I don't know enough to intelligently speak on it at this time. And I might be boring, but who knows? We're up here in the mountains. Pretty country. Snow-covered mountains and hills and such. If the general public would get up off of me, we'd be doing even better. They're riding me to the motherfucking promised land, Jack. Best believe. Riding me to the promised land, ain't you? Y'all are going to try. I'm going to set the cruise at 55, so that'll mostly cruise us at 60 out here with the e-brake. Just car after car after car riding me to the promised land. Hey, giddy up cowboys, Pennsylvania big truck cowboys, or not big truck, Pennsylvania full-size light truck, Cummins, Ram, Super Dude, or whatever they call those, whatever they are, I forget. And I think we're going to end up divorcing ourselves from any notion of making this delivery today, but I can't deal with every car on the road is just surrounding me at all times. I just can't. I can only take so much of that. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cars that were all just surrounding me. And I had to slow way the fuck down to get them away from me. And they were content to just more or less let me set the pace for the whole group. Let me drive. It's not enough to drive this tractor trailer. I need to drive all their vehicles too, apparently. Welcome to America, right, folks? Well, I know you ain't wrong, bitch. All right. Fair enough. But at this point, hey, Calgon, take me away. Fire me, Jack. The only question would be, would I be going back to trucking at some point? Otherwise, do we try to grind out? But see, even then, Martin's going to be a W-2. I just don't think I want to pay for the government anymore. Why should I give the government welfare? I mean, look, can we start calling income taxes what it is? It's welfare for the government. Because if anybody remembers this idea of these founding fathers in the early days of American history, the federal government was expected to fund itself. Do y'all remember that? And I think tariffs had a lot to do with that, probably. And various powers, you know, that the feds had, and, that the states didn't necessarily. Right? So can we just start calling federal income tax what it really is? It's welfare for the government. It's government cheese, but it's for the government. It's still government. Well, it's taxpayer cheese. The government is eating the cheese. All right, I got to pull over. We got to take a leak and re-up on the coffee. It's coffee time. Still early enough. It's 11:41 already. Actually, it's probably already too late. So we'll have a little bit of Yohimbe, I reckon. I'll put a little pep in my step. Yeah, I think I'm good on the caffeine. It's a little too late. I thought it was more like 10:30. Why'd you think that, sir? It's a good question. Indeed. That, sir, would be too bold. Oh, yeah. Get her done, Bo. Maybe I'll just call the owner every morning until he fires me. Just call him, wake him up. After like the third day in a row, it'll be like, aren't you in different time zones? Why are you waking me up at 6 a.m. every day? I don't know, man. Just lucky, I guess. Don't you want to talk to me? You want to talk to the criminal, right? That's me, isn't it? No? Well, who's the criminal? Somebody got to be the criminal. Surely it's me. Well, or I guess maybe the gaslighting's getting to me. Hell, I felt like his tone of voice was gaslighting me this morning. And I don't take that offensively, but I don't take no offense, as my people might say. Not that I have a people, nor would I necessarily value such. What am I looking for? Oh, yeah, the Yohimbe. Oh, no, I know what's going to solve this. Ooh, yes, dark motherfucking chocolate. In fact, I'm skipping the Yohimbe. I forgot. I'm going to take down an entire Lint Excellence, fucking 100% cocoa. Yes, sir. These are now, damn, they're $6. Wally World. Imported. Let me support the government with tariffs, apparently. Hell yeah. Oh yeah. Of course, here's our magical car out of nowhere on this otherwise dead exit. Oh, two of them. Not a single fucking vehicle's passed me, but the moment I start rolling, oh, three of them. Well, they do tend to come in waves. A fourth. We're going to have to wait. I can't sit here all day. You have to wait, buddy. Some theobromine, bromine, whatever, as it may be. Highway 322 West, maybe to State College, Pennsylvania, maybe. I don't know where that is from here. Joe Paterno and Jerry Sandusky. Talk about people not having a memory. Something was going on. I don't remember exactly what it was, but Penn State was paying out a bunch of money for something having to do with athletics and this new, all this NIL for college sports, name, image, likeness. And, you can pay the players now. And people were like acting like maybe that, it was a no-go based on an amount of money. And then there was me and a couple of other people in the comments said, shit, that ain't nothing. Google what they spent on that whole Sandusky controversy. I think that's at like 150 million total. Last I checked, that's just going from memory. Paid out a bunch of settlements and, legal fees and just on and on and on and on and on. It's still going. They're still paying money. They're still paying people out on that deal. Probably still will 30 years from now. That's just a payment, I guess, for them at this point. Yep, State College, 13 miles. Yep, I guess I was right. Boy, he's trying to ride me. These ones finally realize they don't want to go 56. He's trying to ride me, Jack. Nice try. Given E for effort and T for nice try. Oh, New York. New York. Damn. I gotta say, pretty tasty. Better than I remember. Yeah, I wouldn't mind just moving out of this truck into an extended stay or whatever. At this point. Or even a fucking storage unit. Figure it out. Person. Another big old group of cars that was going to try to ride me. 5 of them, 6 of them just driving together for no fucking reason. So you look at your phones. Bunch of bozos. I try to go much over 60. I get to ride right with them. Now I'm catching up somehow. It was crazy. Uphill. Yeah, overall, I made the right decision not delivering that first drop yesterday, but this is fucking rock truck, or is that sand? You ain't got no tarp on that thing. We're about to catch a rock through the windshield. What's about to happen here? Oh, it's salt. Never mind. It's winter, sir. Fair enough. Or sand, whatever it is. Yeah, increase that, and that's because for some reason he passed me, and then he's just right in front of me. I'm not really sure why that's going on. But whatever. Not sure I care anymore. Yeah, signs point to me probably not making. I'm stopping at 174 miles to get these Amazon packages, and I'm pretty sure that is going to be a very busy truck stop. Who knows? But that could be however many minutes that's going to take, and that's also where I'm going to end the day if it comes to that. Here's the problem. It says I'm going to be there at 2:41, and it's another. See, you're looking at a minimum of an hour, and then traffic. So now you're looking at, and that's just if I could beat what the GPS says, but I doubt it. And then so 3:41 plus, it's basically it's just maybe I could roll in right on the dot at 4 p.m. and it's possible that they will say, no, we've already stopped receiving, or based on how difficult it could be to maneuver there, by the time I get back into the dock, see what I'm saying? Like there's any number of things, and see, there's just no way to know. And I think a lot of people will go, why don't you call them? Well, because in my experience, it's basically impossible to get correct information under such a scenario. And to even get the proper person on the phone is damn near impossible most of the time. Although, yeah, it happens. Now, dispatch ain't doing that. Not unless it's his pocketbook involved. He's largely on commission, from what I understand. If not entirely. Now they're slow merging me, and I'm trying to climb hills, and so now I'm in the fucking fast lane because of how slow these people are driving. But I'm driving a big rig, and I can't even get. It's all I can do to stay at 60 and a 65. And I know this pickup I'm passing, the moment I hit 65, he's just going to be on top of me, riding me to the promised land. That's how that goes. But we'll at least try to get in front of him so we can get back over. Yep. Well, maybe 71. Now we're speeding. Yeah, I guess maybe every once in a while somebody's just driving slow. Not often, but it does happen. Sometimes they just driving slow. Bless their heart. Anyway, now people are not liking me talk about the traffic. Hey, there's got to be something else to watch, right? There used to be a YouTube channel here with content. Remember those days? Long since past. What did we get up to? I think we peaked around nine concurrents, I believe. Anyway, at this point, let me check my earbuds. Oh, my earbuds are dying. Hang on. Switch out the earbuds. Could be part of it.
Absurd levels of slow merging. 10 cars back there just slow merged. And they're all just going to fall in line behind me, 53 and the 65. Yeah, it is 322 East for State College. I had to go all the way to 45 to thwart their slow merge. And now a few of them figured it out and passed me, and I got a couple of them tucked in. Just tuck right on in there, Bubba. I'll tuck you in, little Bubba. I'll tuck you in. But anyway, let me make sure we're on the correct microphone. We're not. Maybe. Yeah, should be. Insane in the membrane. Insane in the brain. I don't even like doing that. That did not feel good. So let's not do that anymore. It felt weird. Penn State University, 322 East. State College. Now, what the fuck is Beaver Stadium? It's Beaver Stadium. Is that a person? It's not their mascot. Hmm. Well, sleep good tonight, Jack. The problem is it's going to be so fucking early in the day. I'm probably going to have to try to make this delivery. If I end up driving an extra 2 hours, it'll be more than 2 hours. It's just what happens. Power down. Oh, they're not powering down, of course. Yeah, now they are. Slow down, slow down. Speed up, speed up. They're trying to do both. Come on now. Pick one, Jack. Didn't know what to do. Yep, we're over it. And, not that it's burning a hole in my pocket, but 15 racks, you know, ain't that to sneeze at, right? Hmm. Anyway, I guess I'm out. I completely run out of things to talk about. Hey, good. Bye.